The first victim wasn't supposed to matter. At least, that's what the police initially thought. A random incident. A tragic but isolated event in an otherwise quiet, affluent part of the city. But as the days went on, a disturbing pattern began to emerge, and it pointed to someone no one expected. Someone powerful, someone so wealthy, someone who believed the rules does not apply to them.
His name was Andrew Callahan, a 42-year-old millionaire entrepreneur based in the United States. To the outside world, Andrew had everything: luxury homes, expensive cars, and a reputation as a bold, self-made success story. He was often described as charismatic, confident, and fiercely ambitious. The kind of man who always got what he wanted. But those who knew him more closely described something else: control. Andrew didn't just like being in charge, he needed it. And when that control was threatened, things started to change. Before everything unraveled, Andrew's life looked almost perfect. He lived in a gated community, hosted exclusive parties, and moved in elite social circles. His social media showed a life of luxury, private jets, fine dining, and carefully curated success. But behind the scenes, there were cracks. Employees had quietly quit, business partners had cut ties. Some even described sudden outbursts, moments where Andrew's calm exterior slipped, revealing something darker underneath.
Still, nothing could have prepared anyone for what came next. It started late one evening. A man was found dead near a parking structure just a few miles from Andrew's primary residence. There were no immediate signs of a struggle, no clear motive, and no witnesses willing to step forward. At first, it didn't seem connected to anything larger, but then it happened again. A second incident, different location, similar circumstances, and then a third. Now investigators knew they weren't dealing with coincidence, they were dealing with a pattern. As detectives began reviewing timelines, one detail kept appearing in the background of each case: Andrew Callahan. Not as a suspect, at least not yet, but as someone who had been nearby, someone who had a connection, however small, to each location. It was subtle, easy to overlook, but once they saw it, they couldn't unsee it. So they started digging deeper. Financial records showed unusual activity, large cash withdrawals, unexplained payments, and sudden business disputes that had escalated quickly. Phone data revealed even more concerning. Andrew had been in contact with each of the victims shortly before their deaths. Still, there wasn't enough to charge him, not yet. Then came the breakthrough: a witness. At first, they didn't want to talk, but after repeated questioning, they finally came forward with a statement that changed everything. They had seen Andrew the night of the second incident, not just nearby, but arguing with the victim. The argument, according to the witness, was intense, heated, personal, and then silence. From that point on, the investigation shifted. Andrew was no longer just a person of interest. He became the center of the case. Detectives obtained surveillance footage from nearby buildings. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. A figure matching Andrew's description appeared near multiple scenes, always at the right time, always just before something went wrong. As pressure mounted, investigators moved quickly. Search warrants were issued, his properties were examined, devices were analyzed. And that's when they found it. A series of private notes, hidden, encrypted, but ultimately recovered. Inside those notes was something chilling. Not a confession, not directly, but a mindset. Andrew had written about control, about power, about people who had wronged him, and more importantly, about consequences. Each entry hinted at a growing frustration, a belief that he was above the systems meant to hold people accountable. But the most disturbing part? He didn't see himself as doing anything wrong. He saw himself as justified. As the case unfolded, a clear picture began to form. Each victim had one thing in common. They had crossed Andrew in some way. Business disagreements, financial disputes, personal conflicts. Individually, the connections seemed minor. Together, they told a different story, a calculated one. Authorities moved in and arrested Andrew Callahan. The news spread quickly. Headlines dominated national media. People were stunned. How could someone so successful be connected to something like this? In court, Andrew maintained his composure, calm, controlled, almost detached. When questioned, he denied everything, but the evidence continued to build. Digital footprints, witness testimony, patterns that became impossible to ignore. And then came the final piece, a recovered message sent from Andrew's private device. It wasn't addressed to anyone specifically, but its meaning was clear. Some people only understand consequences. That single line changed everything. It connected the motive, it revealed intent, and it gave prosecutors exactly what they needed. The trial lasted weeks, drawing intense public attention. Experts testified about behavioral patterns. Investigators detailed the timeline. Witnesses described encounters that now felt far more significant in hindsight. Throughout it all, Andrew remained the same, calm, composed, unapologetic, until the verdict. Guilty. The courtroom fell silent as the decision was read. For a moment, Andrew showed no reaction, but then, just briefly, his expression changed. Not fear, not regret, something closer to disbelief, as if he never expected to be held accountable. He was sentenced to life in prison, bringing an end to a case that had shocked the nation. But even after everything was over, one question lingered. How did it go unnoticed for so long? The answer, in many ways, was simple. Power, influence, and the assumption that success equals trust. Andrew Callahan had built a life that looked untouchable, and for a time it was, until the truth caught up. Because no matter how much control someone thinks they have, there's always a moment when it slips, and when it does, the consequences are impossible to escape.